signs in the back. That's nice. Okay, so I'm Adam. You can go ahead and open your Bibles up to Mark 16. If you don't have a Bible, there's one in the pew in front of you, so you do have a Bible. And before I get started, I want to just address the elephant in the room. I'm 22 years old, for those of you who are wondering. And believe me when I say that I'm intimidated preaching to a whole bunch of people that are both older and wiser than I am, and I really do believe that. But I also really do believe that Christ's power is made perfect in our weakness, and that being 22 is a weakness, and that He's given me a word to preach today. So we'll just see what He does with that. Alright, Mark 16, verses 1 through 8. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb. And they asked each other, "Who will roll away the stone from the entrance of the tomb?" But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "You are looking for Jesus, the Nazarene, who was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he has told you." Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. So last week, one of the biggest news stories was that there was a 5.9 earthquake that hit the East Coast. And here's how the New York Times put it. An unusual earthquake centered near Mineral startled millions of people from Maine to Georgia on Tuesday. In the end, there were few reports of serious damage, with more rattling of nerves than property. But the tremors disrupted life in some of the nation's biggest population centers. Tens of thousands of people were evacuated from office buildings. Cell phone service was strangled in the quake, led to disruptions in air traffic, halted trains, jammed roadways, and gave some on the West Coast an opportunity to poke fun at Easterners who seemed panicked and uncertain of how to respond. In earthquake-prone areas, people usually are instructed to stay inside and avoid falling debris, but in places where earthquakes are unfamiliar, and in a post-September 11th environment, few argued with evacuation commands. Okay, so I'm from California, and most of my friends are from California, and so most of my Facebook friends are from California. And I can tell you that after that earthquake, there were a whole lot of statuses harping on the East Coast for their wimpiness in the face of an earthquake. Things like 5.9, are you kidding? Here in California, we don't get out of bed for anything less than a 6.5. Right? And I can't say I didn't participate a little bit. And so we enjoyed ourselves poking fun at our neighbors on the other side of the country. But the response on the East Coast wasn't really crazy, was it? I mean, it wasn't a huge earthquake, but it was an earthquake, right? And it didn't do all that much damage, but no one besides arrogant Californians are really blaming the East Coast for their reaction, are they? Okay, why though? It's because the East Coast isn't prepared for an earthquake. They're not ready for an earthquake. They don't have them all the time. They make their houses out of bricks, which don't really do well in earthquakes, right? And they aren't trained in school from the time they're little what to do in an earthquake. Like in California, we have fire drills and we have earthquake drills, right? So when an earthquake comes, we're ready. In fire drills, you leave the classroom. In earthquake drills, you get under your desk. But I'll tell you what, if a tornado or a hurricane hit San Francisco, see a whole lot of Californians freaking out. Okay? Or I cannot tell you the kind of hysteria that would happen if 6 inches of snow fell in San Francisco. People couldn't go to work because you can't drive in conditions like that. That would be just crazy. You can't even get out of your driveway. I'm going to learn that. Because we're not prepared for that. We don't see snow all the time. We drive to the snow. We're not ready for that. But if preparation is the key to responding well to disaster, then how do we prepare for those disasters, those earthquakes in our lives? And we can learn a couple of things from this passage about responding to earthquakes in our lives. We can learn that God is going to shake things up, and that Christian community is the key to withstanding those earthquakes. God is going to shake things up, and Christian community is the key to withstanding those earthquakes. Okay, so first, God is going to put earthquakes in our lives to shake things up. Think about these women's last week. Think about how they come to the tomb. There's this guy, Jesus, and he comes in, he starts doing these miracles, and then he's healing people, and he's teaching people. And it shakes these women's lives to the core, right? I mean, it shakes all of first century Judea to the core. And then Jesus gets arrested. And he gets tried by the Jewish and the Roman leaders, and they sentence him to death, and then they crucify him. And where are these women when he's crucified? Mark 15:40 says that Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome are watching from a distance. So they see him get killed. Right? And so Jesus dies, and they know because they watched it. They watched it happen. And so everything they thought was going to happen just isn't going to happen anymore. Apparently he's not the Messiah. He's not all that they had hoped for. He's not going to free them from Rome. It's just not going to happen anymore. And so all of a sudden things are just completely unstable. Their world has been absolutely shaken again. Right? It was shaken when Jesus came in and started shaking things up. But then when he died, their world gets shaken again. I mean, have you ever hoped something was going to happen? I mean, you were really hoping. You were pretty sure it was going to happen. You were just hoping it was going to happen, and then it doesn't happen. And, I mean, you thought God was going to do something in your life, and he just didn't. And so you're left feeling abandoned and disappointed. This is the state that these women come to the tomb in. And, I mean, they're ready to move on. They've accepted the reality that Jesus is dead. It's all over. It's time for these women to just get back to their normal life, to settle back in. From this 3-year blip that they thought was going to change things forever, but it didn't. And so now it's just over. And think about what these women are doing. They're performing their last devoted act to Jesus. Because if you think about a rotting body is that it smells bad. And so after 2 days, it would have just smelled terrible. I mean, look, like, I smell bad after 2 days, all right? You can ask Lexi after the service. Because some of you know I'm living with the Gibsons. So I was asking Lexi this week. I really like living with the Gibsons, by the way. Like, it's fun living with them, and Lexi's a good cook. And so I don't want to screw a good thing up, right? And so I asked Lexi this week, I said, hey, is there anything I can be doing to be a better house guest or stop doing that I am doing? And she said, it's pretty good. Well, your room smells bad. So it smells like a college guy's dorm room, which apparently isn't a compliment. Good to know in college. Right, so we're working on that, right? Bed Bath & Beyond, here I come. Okay, but if I smell bad after a couple of days, imagine how bad a dead, rotting body smells. And so these women are going to the tomb to dump spices on their dead friend so that he doesn't smell so bad as he rots away. That's what they're doing. It's their final act of religious devotion. It's over. It's just over. And so they go to the tomb, but as they get close, they see the stones rolled away. The tomb's opened up. And so they get closer and they kind of peek in the tomb. And you can feel their anxiety setting in. What are we going to see? And there's an angel where Jesus is supposed to be, right? An angel. And the angel's like, don't be alarmed. Right? How about this? You be less alarming. Right? I mean, and the angel's like, you're looking for Jesus. And he's risen. He's not here. See the place where they laid him. And in 3 words, he has risen. God, through his angel, totally shakes these women's lives again. Totally shakes these women's lives again. I mean, talk about a serious tremor. They go to close the door on the whole Jesus thing. Right, to put some spices on their dead friend's body. And there's an angel, and the stone is rolled away, and Jesus isn't there. And what do you expect these women to do? Be okay with this? Right? I mean, how could they be? They're not prepared for it. They're not prepared for it. Look, they should expect it. They should be prepared for it. They should expect it because Jesus told them. Right? The angel says, he's going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him just as he has told you. Right? It's from Mark 14:28, where Jesus says, but after I'm raised up, I'm going to go before you to Galilee. I mean, they were told explicitly, but they didn't really expect it to happen. And so when it does, they just can't handle it. And so in verse 8, they flee from the tomb, and the emotions are these: trembling, bewildered, and afraid. Trembling, bewildered, and afraid. And look, we can get on these women and say, they should have known. They were told. Silly women. But friends, this is us too. This is us too. God has made it abundantly clear to us that He is going to send earthquake after earthquake in our lives, of both kinds, right? Because the women experience 2 different kinds of earthquakes in this passage, right? They experience Jesus' death shakes them because it's an event that they had no control over and causes deep suffering, right? But then at his resurrection, they're terrified too, because this event has happened, and they're unsure of how to respond to it. And so it's 2 different kinds of shaking, but both shake them, and both shake us. And God has told us that both are going to happen in our lives, and we still don't expect it. And so what could our reaction be except for fear? So I'm a 22-year-old kid straight out of college, and I'm trying to plan the rest of my life. What's going to happen to me when it doesn't go the way I think it's going to? I mean, I'm already in Wisconsin, so it's not going to go the way I thought it was going to. But this was not part of my master plan a year ago. I'm going to graduate college and go to Wisconsin. I like Wisconsin. I like it here. Just, I'm not going to in a couple months. So, but really, what's going to happen to me when God shakes my plans worse than moving out of California? What's going to happen to me when my parents can't be there at my wedding because they got killed by cancer? Or what's going to happen to me if I get in an accident and I get paralyzed? I like playing sports. I like being active. What's going to happen to me if my first kid has autism? Man, that terrifies me. That terrifies me. I'm not expecting that. But let me ask you something. What's going to happen to you if you're passed up on that promotion that you needed financially? You are counting on it. Or if your kid just gets on a soccer team with 5 kids whose parents are absentee parents and end up being a terrible influence on them. Or what if your next visit to the doctor reveals that you have cancer? Or that your spouse has cancer? Or that your kid has childhood leukemia? Are you really prepared for that? Man, I'm not. I know there are areas in my life where, and I'm sure in yours too, is that we simply don't believe the gospel. We know it, and we've heard it. But we're like the woman in the passage. We just don't believe it deep down. And so when God comes in and He shakes your life to a core, maybe this has happened to you, it will terrify you. It'll terrify you.